Welcome to Your Legacy Stories podcast. Your host, Natalie McQueen, helps people from all walks of life to create, live, and preserve their legacy for future generations to enjoy. Natalie became a legacy designer after a near-death experience that made her completely reevaluate the legacy she was leaving in this world. She is also a book publisher who has guided over 500 authors to become international bestsellers. Natalie's mission is to help you craft the legacy you deserve, encourage you to live it to the fullest, and then preserve it for future generations to enjoy. On this show, her guests share moments of purpose, gratitude, wisdom, and tradition, and of course, their legacy stories.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Natalie McQueen with Your Legacy Stories podcast. And this whole week, we have been talking with amazing people that have been veterans and served our country, and we're just honoring them. And today we have Mr. John Verrico, and he's going to highlight us on how he's making the world a better place today. But then we're going to go back into his military stories. So thank you, John.
Hi, Natalie. Thank you so much for having me on the show and for what you're doing to spotlight veterans this week. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you guys. I mean, every person I've interviewed this week has pulled a different aspect that I didn't consider what you get out of serving. You know, there's the good and there's the bad. And there was a combination there.
And the ugly sometimes.
Yeah, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And, when I interviewed one of the ladies, she literally made me cry. And it was so touching how she shared how one person changed her life. So, yeah. So let's start off. Tell us what you do today, how you make the world a better place, and who you work with.
Well, thank you so much. I am a leadership and communication trainer and coach. And for the past 42 years, including 25 years in the Navy, I was helping people learn how to tell their stories. So I was getting the boiler technician out of the, or the gunner's mate or somebody else who do the kind of unappreciated, unrecognized things. Yeah. And getting them in front of the media, in front of the public, so they can tell the stories behind the scenes of what goes on. And I did that not only in the Navy, but also in the government too, staying completely away from the political side.
Right.
But I mean, they get enough, press, but really the everyday worker and being able to showcase how those people contribute and why what they do matters. And I found that when somebody can tell their story and share their story, they feel better about what they do. They take more pride in what they do. And even if they've got a jerk for a boss, they can kind of feel like they shine a little bit. And so that's what I do. I've been doing leadership and communication, training and coaching as part of my full-time job, and then also as a side thing for many years now.
Yeah. That's really important because we've tried to show our children from a young age that, first of all, not everyone is blessed to be able to go, like, I'll give you an example of just go on vacation to, places in the world and travel and stay in nice hotels and stuff. But what makes it good is the service people all along the way. The person that helped you book, the person that carried your bags in, the person that brought you breakfast, the person that made your bed up.
Absolutely.
And if we don't make them feel special, then we're lacking in, we're taking advantage. And so I love what you're doing, and I love how you spotlight those people, because I feel it's so important that sometimes we just take for granted the work that is done around us.
There's nothing, Natalie, there's nothing that we can do alone.
Right.
No matter how important we think we are as an individual, we can't accomplish diddly squat. I mean,
exactly.
Really, I mean, if you think about it, no matter big CEO, no matter whatever you're out there doing, if nobody buys your product, if nobody manufactures your product, if nobody is selling your product, all of those people, if nobody is transporting your product, if nobody
Oh,
fixes the roads so you can deliver your product, all of that, nothing happens unless
okay.
everybody else is involved. And that's why we need to learn how to appreciate everybody else on the planet.
Yeah, I love that. All right, well, let's get into the military part. And, what really inspired you to serve in the military? And was there a person or event that influenced that decision?
It's really a funny story how I wound up in the military. At that point in my life, I had changed careers a bunch of times. I didn't really know where I wanted to be. And I did find that I wanted to become a journalist. I had gone back to school after trying a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
I was a good writer and I wanted to be a journalist. But the problem was that I just was very irresponsible. I couldn't get up in the morning.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was awful. And so I had no self-discipline. And I couldn't be relied on to show up in time for the news to still be news. It was history by the time I arrived because it was over. And so I realized that I needed some discipline in my life. And my kid brother, who's 4 years younger than I am, he said, I've been thinking I want to continue my career and build up some skills, and I'm thinking about going into the military. And he goes, you need some discipline and you should come in with me. And I said, you know what? You're absolutely right. So we thought about it a bit, and neither of us wanted to get shot at and crawl through the mud. So thinking about the Marine Corps, God bless them for what they do, and the Army and all that, we said, no, that's not really for us. We're not that physical. And
Okay.
then I'm like, I've got a fear of heights, so the Air Force is out.
Okay. Yeah.
But we didn't know how to swim, so we decided on the Navy. And that's, I mean, that's silly almost. But the Navy did have a program for Navy journalists, and I said, this could be a very interesting career. And so there was a little bit of a delay because the public affairs and journalism school for the military is pretty popular. You have to actually sign up for an additional year. You don't sign up for 4 years, you have to
Okay.
sign up for 5.
Yeah.
So there was a delay in being able to attend that school. So they said, you're going to have to wait like 18 months. I said, that's fine. We'll go on delayed entry. And my kid brother, he was a little bit on the heavy side. And he said, I need to lose a little weight before I can go. So that's fine that we have a delay, but we know we're going to go in together when the time comes.
Yeah.
Well, then they called and said, we have an opening
Uh-oh.
in the school and you can leave in 20 days. And my kid brother said, go ahead out into the fleet and I'll meet you out there when I, drop off a couple of pounds and I can go in.
It was his idea and off you go.
Yes. And he's still laughing to this day. He never put the uniform on. He never joined.
You're kidding.
Nope. He did not.
Oh,
He did. So, and every time he looks at how far I've come in life
okay.
and the things that I've achieved, he looks and he says, I did that. I forced you.
Oh.
I forced you into doing that.
Oh, that's funny. Well, that's awesome.
It turned out to be the best decision.
Right? Obviously, I mean, that's a funny story because I wonder if does he have any regret of not going, or have you
Now,
ever talked
I
about
think
that?
it was funny because when I first joined, we were allowed to have beards.
Okay.
Not as a junior enlisted, but like once I got into the petty officer ranks, we were allowed to have beards. And then the Navy said, "Oh, you know what? The other services don't have beards," and we realized that a gas mask doesn't seal on a beard, and so no more beards.
Oh, okay.
And so my brother at that point grew a beard and would show up at all the events to show off that he now has a beard and I
He can
don't
have a
have
beard
one.
and you
Yeah.
cannot.
Yeah, yes. So he's just, I don't think he ever regretted not going in.
Yeah,
But he definitely took pride in having nudged me along that path.
that's awesome. So when you were in the military, were there some people you served with who really left that lasting impression or that an impact on you? And what did you learn from them?
There were so many people, but I'll start off with my very first chief petty officer. When I reported aboard my first ship, he was my immediate supervisor.
Mhm.
And here I am, a junior kid in the Navy. I mean, I was 23, so I wasn't like I was a child.
Right.
But I had done a bunch of different work and I'd gone to college and stuff, but I still didn't have a degree, so I wasn't an officer. But I still come aboard as a junior enlisted guy with zero Navy experience.
Okay.
And I'm working for this gruff, very seasoned senior chief petty officer, chief petty officer, not a senior chief, which is an actual rank. He was a senior chief petty officer.
Okay.
But anyway, I was working directly for him, and I was in charge. I walked in, and there hadn't been a journalist on board the ship in 18 months, and so they needed somebody to come in and just take over right away, and that meant 2 TV stations, 2 radio stations,
Oh,
a
wow.
shipboard newspaper, a monthly newsletter home to the families, handling all the media queries, sending out press releases, speechwriter for the commanding officer, setting up public events for when we were in port, becoming a tour guide and coordinating dignitary visits and public visits to the ship, a ship's photographer, and I also handled fan mail. I like the Navy. Would you send me a picture of your ship? And I was a staff of 1.
Wow.
And this chief petty officer, his name was Paul Pusker, is Paul Pusker. He's still around. But everybody called him Chief Push.
Okay.
And this guy basically said, "You've been trained to do your job. I trust you're going to do it.
Oh,
Let me do my job."
okay.
He did not, he was there to help. He was there to
Yeah.
provide resources, but he did not try to micromanage me.
Nice.
He respected me for the training that I had, for the slight little bit of maturity that I had. But he treated me like a fellow human being, not like an underling.
Nice.
And then he himself was a wannabe radio jock,
Yeah.
and he had a collection of oldies music on cassette tapes, because we're talking way back when.
Yeah.
And we would get together after hours and record the Chief Push Time Machine radio show. And he had a voice like Wolfman Jack.
Oh, wow.
And so we had such great times together doing the show. But he, like I said, he treated me like a human being. And you see other people and other types of bosses that like to micromanage and bully
Oh,
and
yeah.
things like that. But the way he treated me was the kind of behavior that I wanted to emulate as a leader myself.
Yeah. Well, it allowed your creativity to come out and probably, put a structure together that felt good for you and worked for what you see they needed. And
That was
that's
exactly
awesome.
it. He provided for me a safe work environment and encouraged me to take responsibility and risk for my own work.
Yep.
And just was very supportive. Now, that didn't mean he didn't kick my butt when I needed it,
Right.
but and that's what made him such a great supervisor. I mean, it wasn't just the friendship bond that we ultimately wound up with,
Yep.
but it was that working relationship of mutual respect that just was so wonderful. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you something, he retired only a year after I came on board, not even less than that. We stayed in touch on and off over the years. And when I retired 25 years later, he showed up
Oh,
to
that's
my retirement
amazing.
ceremony and read the Chief Petty Officer's retirement creed.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it was,
amazing.
I still
Sounds like a
tears me up,
great,
to this day.
yeah. So looking back at your time in the military, is there anything you would have done differently or any lessons you wish you had learned earlier?
I would say, I wish I would have written more letters.
Mm.
I know that
Letters
sounds
to,
to my fiance.
okay,
So interesting side story and kind of a goofy thing, right? You forget about how difficult those separations can be. Now, when I first joined the military, I did not have any special person in my life. As a matter of fact, I had been cheated on and things like that, and we had some really bad relationships, just didn't work out. And when I joined the military, I said, there is no way I'm ever going to get involved with anybody while I'm on
right.
a ship. I couldn't trust anybody when I'm in the same neighborhood. How am I going to trust them when I'm thousands of miles away? And
Yeah,
the separations that happen with family. Um, we're out at sea at, 6, 7, 8, 10 months at a time.
Wow.
And back then, there was no email, there were no cell phones, there
Sure.
was very little
No
contact.
FaceTime, no, yeah,
No, there was none of that. And
yeah,
so those separations were separations. And we would, I mean, people would communicate back home with snail mail.
okay,
And when the ship is out at sea, you might not get snail mail for
sure.
a month or so at a time.
Wow.
I met this wonderful woman who ultimately became my wife, Bonnie, and she just, from the moment we met, I knew that we were right and that I could trust her.
Yeah.
And off I went to sea. And out of the 3 years that we dated before we got married, we only spent about 9 months in each other's physical presence in PC.
Wow.
Everything was done. The courtship was done entirely through snail mail. And she was a wonderful, prolific writer. I have boxes of letters from that time.
Oh.
She has a stack with a rubber band
Mm.
because I was a
Okay,
journalist.
but not that I know exactly why, but you just told us you had all of that to take over and do. I'm sure
Yes,
you weren't
yes,
just
so
sitting
true. And
around
so
twiddling your thumbs.
I'm writing all day. I'm writing, the
Right.
evening newscast script. I'm writing everything all day long. So the last thing I had the energy for was to write.
Yeah.
So what happened was when we would pull into a U.S. friendly port, like a NATO port or something, I would track down the International Telephone Exchange
Right.
and sign up on a waiting list for an overseas line, which was usually 3 or 4 hours, 6 hours, and we're on a holiday.
Oh,
And you
wow.
couldn't leave the building while you're on the waiting list because if they called your name and you weren't there, you went to the bottom of the list again.
Oh, wow.
And that meant it was time to go back to the ship before your call would go through.
Yeah.
And I didn't have credit cards back then because it wasn't that big of a
Yeah.
deal to carry them. And so I would have to call collect. And so here it was like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning back here in the States. And she would get a collect call for $17 a minute.
Oh, I remember. Oh, I don't remember that high, but yes, I remember in college some of my phone bills to my now husband.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Those long distance calls with those. So these overseas calls,
Oof.
the collect calls were $17 a minute. I think Bonnie married me ultimately because she had invested so much at that point.
Right.
But I mean, there's a lot of things I look back and I wish I would have done differently. But
Yeah.
interestingly, that's the first thing that comes to mind is I wish I would have written more letters and made more connections and kept better connections with people
Yeah.
back home while we were away. I
Well,
wish we
now
had
you
that
can write
recipe
her
more.
love letters every day.
Every day. I just walk over and kiss her instead.
Aw. That's awesome. All right. Well, I focus on legacy and I love to have people think about their legacy. So tell us about someone who's had a big impact on your life.
Natalie, I consider myself extremely fortunate as I had, both parents in my life.
Mhm.
And my father he was a blue collar guy.
Okay.
He had my paternal grandfather, who I never met, passed away when my father was still, in school. And so dad left school at the age of 13 in order to go to work and
Yep.
help support his siblings and his mom. And and so he went through life without, a big education and a lot of formal training. And
Mhm.
what he would always try to learn how to do something new so that he could keep new jobs and keep money
Okay.
coming into the family. So if somebody needed a house painted, he could learn how to paint a house or carpentry work or whatever. And he just never let anything get in the way of his being able to provide. And he inspired us. He told my brother and I, he said, I don't, whether you stay in school or not, I would prefer if you did, but it's your choice. But whatever you do decide, don't pass up an opportunity to learn.
Nice.
And he was very, very inspiring in telling us to learn something new every day. And he said, Don't say you don't like this unless you've tried it.
Yep.
Don't not do something unless you've given it an opportunity. Don't say you don't like that food unless you've tasted it or eaten it. Don't say you don't like that person unless you've given them the opportunity.
Ooh,
And
nice.
so that's the kind of, with that as a foundation, as I went through my life and career, that's always been kind of at the back of my mind, right? Give everything a chance, and which is probably why I tried a zillion jobs before I wound up in the Navy.
Yeah.
But just to give people that opportunity and learn to appreciate people and things and foods and parts of the world for what they have to offer.
Yeah.
And I encourage everybody to do that, experience life.
I'm there with you for 99%. What I found is interviewing people and working with authors from all over the world. When you see our differences and then you get to know the person, and then you see the beauty in those differences, or you understand why they do what they do. And then when you see their heart, and you see that we have more similarities
Yes.
than we do differences. And I wish people would stop and, take that opportunity to get to know. Now, here's where you lose me a little bit.
Uh,
I'm like such a chicken to try like really crazy food.
Food. I knew it was going to be food. I knew it was going to be food.
So yeah, if you take me to some foreign country and want me to eat cockroaches off a stick, I
There are some limitations. Okay.
yeah.
Dog, cat, monkey, and bug.
Ooh,
They
yeah,
just those are things that I just can't.
yeah.
That I will not try. But I will not say I don't like them. I
Mhm.
will say that I do
Right,
not want to try those things.
right, exactly.
So yeah, we do have that, but I do have to admit that being in the Navy and traveling around the world, unlike some of my fellow sailors who wanted to go to the nearest bar when we got into port,
Okay,
a cluster of friends of mine would go and find a local restaurant and try the local food,
okay,
and
nice.
had such wonderful experiences. And some of our greatest laughing moments were over some of these foods that would.
Yeah,
And so some of the greatest memories were, trying those hot peppers in Tunisia
oof.
and having the entire restaurant laugh at us and then buy our lunch for us because they thought we
Oh,
were so
cute.
entertaining. You know, or having paella in Spain that had some interesting types of seafood on it that was unexpected, and the reactions of some of my colleagues, and walking down the street in Naples where you would have like a hot dog truck in New
Right,
York City.
yeah.
There's octopus trucks,
Oh, oh.
octopus carts. You walk up to the octopus cart and you order some octopus, and they cut up this nice
Mm.
steamed octopus. They cut up the legs into bite-sized chunks, put them in a cup, pour some hot broth on it, and there you go. For about
That's
a
when,
dollar, or
yeah.
$2 worth. And I
Oh,
had, of course, my friends are freaking out, going, "Oh my God,
right,
it's octopus!" Yeah, come
yeah.
on.
If you've ever seen that documentary, My Octopus Friend, like I don't know how it
Oh yeah, I
gets,
know.
oh.
I can't watch that stuff
Oh, I love
because
it.
as soon as you put personality to an
Right,
animal, that's why I don't eat dogs, cats, monkeys.
right. Or calamari. We would swim and we would see all the beautiful calamari just sitting there
Yes,
doing their
yeah, they
thing.
are beautiful.
And yeah, and then we go for dinner and my family's ordering calamari. I'm like, we just swam with that. How can you do this?
I
But
know, I
I'm too
know. Yeah, I don't do
mental
turtle
that
either,
way.
for those reasons.
Yeah,
But there's something to be said, and you actually hit on it very well. If we realize that there is something we have in common with everybody on the planet, there's
absolutely.
always something. We may like the same sports team. We may live in the same town. That's a commonality. We may have
Yeah,
gone to we may study the same topic, like the same food. We
yeah,
have something in common with everyone. If we look for those common bonds instead of our differences, we
exactly.
learn to appreciate each other more. And then we take those things that we do differently, and we learn from them, and we grow from them. We learn to appreciate the
Yeah,
differences instead of looking at them as, oh, you are different.
different. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. So What would you love to be remembered for?
And I think we've actually just hit on it in the long run. Um, I don't want to be remembered for, I mean, I do want to be remembered for being a writer, you know, or international best-selling author or any of that great stuff. That's all fine and dandy.
Yeah.
But in the long run, you know, if you think about what our legacy is not our stuff.
Yeah.
It's not the things we've amassed. It's not my collection of monster movie memorabilia. It's not,
Right.
you know, it's not any of these things that we put value to. What our legacy is what we'll be remembered for.
Mhm.
And what we'll be remembered for is how we treated people and how we made them feel.
Absolutely.
And so I hope that if nothing else, when my time is gone, that people reflect and they say, I remember, you know, John said this to me, or John made me feel like I was special.
Yeah.
That's how my dad was. And then my mother was the same way. You know, people still, my father worked for Nabisco.
Mhm.
People to this day refer to him as Mr. Cookie.
Oh.
My cousin said he didn't even know my father's name was John. He used to call him Uncle Cookie because dad always would bring, you know, sample cookies from Nabisco. But even though that was just a simple thing,
Yeah.
you know, we have fond memories of people because of the way they treated us or the things that they've done. And that's the way I'd like to be remembered. You know, my mother was a performer. She was a singer and dancer early in her career. Before she married dad, she was with the Rockettes.
Oh, wow.
And then put all that aside to have a family. And then many
Yeah.
years later they got divorced, and she started doing fashion shows and talent shows and stuff again. So the tap shoes came out of the closet kind of a
Yeah.
thing.
Aw.
And then she got remarried, and then they went away again, and she put that aside for her life. And her second husband died, and then years later she met the man who's become her third husband, and he was a singer.
Right.
And
Okay.
so
The tap
mom,
shoes may come out.
the top tap shoes came out again. She started singing with him
Aw.
and dancing, and they were performing in senior centers where they were
Nice.
helping to kind of brighten up people's days. She was older
Yeah.
than half the residents herself.
Right.
He was 85 when she passed away, and she was still dancing and performing 2 weeks before she
Mhm.
passed.
That's
Um,
beautiful.
but but
She's living her passion.
she was absolutely, and at 85, her husband was 74 because mom was a cougar.
Yeah.
But she did that But she did that not
Did you just
because,
call your mom a cougar?
of course she was, yes. She did that, but she did that stuff not because she wanted her glory for herself. She loved bringing joy and happiness to other people.
Yeah.
And so again, that's what people will remember. And that's what I'd like to be remembered for, as how I treated people. And hopefully I haven't hurt anybody over the years. I've tried not to.
Yeah. No, I love it, John. You know, we get to spend a little bit of time together, and your essence and your love of life and what you do and how you bring out people's stories and stuff, you're going to have an amazing legacy that people will remember forever. So thank you so much for being here today. And is
Thank
there
you
any
for
last words?
I will just say, first of all, thank you for having me here. Thanks for giving the opportunity to have that legacy and to spread it beyond. And it's the work that you do, Natalie, to helping people to get their legacy out there, and help people realize their legacy. That makes all the difference. And so I thank you and I appreciate you. And if I have one last thought to tell everybody is to just remember that you don't know what's going on in other people's lives.
Hmm.
So just treat each other with compassion. Look for the things that we have in common. If you have nothing else to offer but a shoulder or a hand or a smile,
Or a smile, right?
just
Yeah.
do so because it can
Love
make
it.
all the difference in the world. And thank you. That could be our legacy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service and making our country what it is today. And I'm going to put all your bio and your information so people can, reach out to John, have a conversation with him, help or have him help bring out your story for your own family. We can work together and
Thank you,
create
Nat.
your
And
legacy.
sorry, no, like I didn't want to come in here with traumatic war stories and stuff
Right.
like that. I
Right.
wanted to talk about a kind of a different side of the
Yeah.
life. And so thank you so
And
much.
I love that because like I said, speaking to each one of you this week brought out a different side of the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And we appreciate that you went through all of it and shared a little bit of the highlights.
It wasn't all rosy. We know that
Right.
neither is life itself, but there are the things that we choose to make part of ourself.
Mhm.
And I choose to pick those highlights
Yeah,
rather than the dark times.
beautiful. Well, thank you, John, and I will put all your information so people can get hold of you.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Your Legacy Story Podcast. If you would like to share your legacy story with Natalie or get your legacy book started, please reach out at giftsoflegacy@gmail.com. Be sure to add My Legacy Stories in the subject line. We would love to help you share your legacy message out to the world. Natalie would like to invite you to join our private Facebook group, Create Your Legacy Life. She shares tips on book publishing, ways to create and leave your legacy, and she interviews the most amazing legacy creators, sharing their moments of purpose, gratitude, wisdom, and tradition, and of course, their legacy stories. See you next week.